say, I'll declare, and at least some of it is referred to by me and several other people as nabs, new age bullshit. And sure, that's the caution. Again, the ism, theology, the subject matter, is it purely sensationalism? Is it real truth? And I don't mean I want it to be this way, therefore I've decided it will be this way. I mean real truth. Very often truth really hurts our feelings. In other words, I don't really want this to happen to me, and yet it has to. That's a learning experience in itself. Be very careful of such things. To don new robes is fun. It may even be exciting as the dress-up type stuff, but be aware that when you don new robes, you are learning something, and that until you become, by your own standards, familiar with it enough to see it only as robes and not as a title and as an attainment. Just be cautious of that. Enjoy. I have a little sticker on my refrigerator that says, enjoy life. This is not a dress rehearsal. And that's really the point I want to make regarding that.
So it's hard sometimes to be discerning and not be judging,
Right.
I mean, you have to discern for yourself what's right for you, at the same time not judging the other person as being wrong.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. That's right.
So it may be right for the other person.
It is right. Also, who is your teacher? Don't answer that. I mean, who is your teacher? Well, did I learn from garbage men? Now, see, just by saying that, right away I've stereotyped. Well, now the people that don't know me that well, yes, I have learned some of the most profound, divine, and wonderful things from one of the most stereotypical garbage men. And I'll even give his name, George Burmeister. I do a little thing with children, and I use that same name because of the divinity that I have a perception for his name, God rest his soul, he's passed on. George Burmeister was a garbage man and worked with me for 3 years as a garbage man in Monroe County. And we were one of the best crews that were garbage men. We went to the houses and collected the garbage. So what does that have to do with teaching and divinity? George Burmeister was a very unique individual, as most of us are. And in that time frame, when I had the company of George Burmeister as a personal friend, and now I can give him a title of a teacher, I learned extremely profound things about society, about, just the entire gamut of subjects. Be careful of who your teachers are. You can learn some of the most divine things from garbage men and people with badges and slash marks on their sleeve and doctorate degrees. And I'm not making fun of any of those people. God bless them for what they have accomplished. But be careful, because the degrees don't make the teacher. The teacher, that yellow aspect of a person's being, is the teacher condition. And the lessons to be learned may require math or language and other things. I'm afraid we're going to be drowned out by sound. So let's cut. Take a look.
I'm going to throw out a couple of words to you that I personally have never heard you discuss. One is capital punishment.
Oh, just that? Okay,
right.
I'll respond to that. Capital punishment in a newly formed and rather archaic, and I don't dare use the word simplistic, society had value. In that in any given society, there are circumstances which the society needs to be protected from, with the inability to incarcerate or protect or chain or prevent. It was a viable option. To further answer this question, listen to the whole answer, not just the sentence that I, Tom Sawyer, totally disagree with capital punishment. I do disagree that it is an unfortunate situation where we, human beings, have to purposely take the life of another human being. That is admitting the worst failure of the society, or we as human beings. It is denying large amounts of our capacity for compassion, for understanding, for knowledge, for reparation. I should qualify myself to say that I have visited Attica Prison on several occasions. I heard a comedian once talking about it, and he said that he had been to, I might have been Attica also, but a major prison. And then he said, thank God for prisons. Right? I have a tendency to agree with that unfortunate as it may be, there are individuals, there are human beings that are incarcerated in prisons such as Attica. And for our society and my children and my well-being, thank God that they are in there behind bars and I'm able to walk down the street rather comfortably. Okay, now that we've got onto that subject, to annihilate that person, to put that person to death for crimes committed or for the prevention of further crimes committed, that's unfortunate. We have the technology right now to not just do a lobotomy. Many people have that fearful thing of back as early or as short a time ago as the 1950s, where they would do a frontal lobotomy and destroy a person's brain and make them into practically a vegetable, and that they would just be zombie-like and walk around. And some people think that that's a viable option for somebody as a child rapist, a murderer, a mass murderer who psychologically will obviously do that again. If they are released in this society, they will do it again, and all the psychology schools in the world are not going to repair that person. They're not going to make that person not be a psychopathic murderer. Okay? To kill that person, we have the technology right now to do a form of brain surgery to alleviate pressures, situations, and I'm hinting toward a partial lobotomy even. In other words, make that person physically unable to perform a certain act or to function in a way where they can intellectually, shall I say intellectually or psychologically, create the situation in their lives and in their mind that makes them the perpetrator of a rape, a murder, something of this nature. It has never solved the vindictive, in other words, we've never realized satisfaction that that bastard is dead now, and that makes me feel better. So much for the phone call.
Right.
Yes, everybody's fine, and my mother says hello. Yeah, for that person to be dead and have that satisfaction of, say, the father of a child who's been murdered, saying, I'm glad that the person is dead. Well, that's superficial. That's surface-wise. And what he's really saying is his frustration and misunderstanding, bear with me if I say that, his misunderstanding and his frustration for the perpetrator to do such a thing is now gone. And in his mind, he's telling himself that that can never happen again. Now, that is correct in a way, because if the person is dead, they're not going to very well kill another, murder another person, or rape another person, or something that is under the heading of why do we have capital punishment, and to solve what problem. It doesn't solve the depth of the problem, but the deep-rooted frustration of the loss of a loved one by way of one of these crimes. And it does not really upgrade society. You will never be able, I shouldn't say never say never, but you, for right now, for this day, if you went and killed all the psychopaths, first of all, you're never going to find them. And as you proceed in doing this facilitation, there will be creating by the society alone additional psychopaths. In other words, you will never be able to weed out
the killer.
Right. You'll never be able to accomplish that goal. So if you look at the society as a whole, the society as a whole has not solved anything. It's a Band-Aid process that cannot work. Because you cannot kill or execute all of the people that are a detriment to society. So you're never going to be successful that way. Toward that success, what do we do with a Charles Manson? What do we do with an Adolf Hitler? What do we do with a child rapist, convicted, and so on? I think the most intelligent psychiatrists, the most intelligent, and there are very few by my standards who are intelligent enough to admit openly that the probability is that we will never change a murderer from the capacity of murdering again. We can teach them remorse, we can teach them that it stems from an unfortunate childhood, and all these things that are just add to the frustration. Very little true understanding is gained, in my opinion, by the statements and so on that, well, this person murdered because his mother beat him as a child. I mean, that's rather shallow. That's not the it's not the only thing that created that person to becoming a criminal. So the problem isn't solved with performing capital punishment. To incarcerate these people costs a lot of money. Are we a society that can afford it? Well, if we can afford $50 million for an airplane, that doesn't necessarily work, and if it is ever used, it'll be too late to have satisfaction in the society anyway. We can spend $50 million for a single airplane for that. Can we afford to incarcerate the people that we cannot address and cannot answer and cannot repair? Right? Yes, we can. We can afford to build facilities suitable enough and technologically sound enough to incarcerate such individuals for the moment being. If we do not have the technology to perform physical type or biochemical or biological reparations within their body, when you have a cancerous state on your arm, it may have to be cut away and allow a skin graft and so on to be generally a whole person, a well person. We're learning in psychological terms that you can be manically depressed, and with certain therapies and possibly chemical interventions and so on, you can biochemically repair yourself. Extended, that is available to us today. I'm not saying that in the local hospital right now they can do that, but it really hasn't, there's been no money poured into that. There's been no major research involved in that. By major, I mean worldwide. Worldwide attention to say, we have this very serious problem. Here's monies for research. What can and can't we do? And of course, it goes into the criminal justice system, that what can you do to a person? Isn't it ironic that we can legally kill a person, called capital punishment, but we cannot legally inject them with the serum that may possibly cure them? I mean, it's very ironic. But no, I think that capital punishment is incorrect because there are other ways of protecting society. To make one feel good because a person is dead, having created a heinous crime, that's too shallow, and that person needs to work out their depression or their anxiety regarding their opinions of society themselves. Wow.
How about the word abortion?
Yeah, it's in the news lately. All right, right off the bat, I want to make it clear, because I have skirted the issue, and anybody of any intelligence has to be very careful talking about the subject in general, because first of all, it's an emotional thing. And if I say that this poem is beautiful and you don't understand it or like it, how am I to convince you that I'm okay and I'm right for liking it? You may think that I'm a jerk for liking such trash. Okay, since it's generally an emotional issue and a spiritual issue, a religious issue, some spiritual and religious, other people, it's a religious issue, and they're not even aware of any degree of spirituality within their life. God bless those people. But generally, I think that an abortion, in other words, and again, let's just zero in on the mother-to-be, or the woman who is carrying this fetus, this zygote or this fetus, extraordinary situation that we're not prepared to deal with culturally. There hasn't been a culture that has really dealt with that accurately at all in history, as far as I know. That is one of the most unfortunate situations that they have the option for currently. It will be rather devastating. If the person is a materialistic person and they solely judge that this will interfere with my career, with my profession, and that I don't want a child, I don't want a baby, and I don't care about anything else, they will experience the emotional, the psychological, and to a degree spiritual aspects of postpartum situations. And if not right away, then later. And if right away, possibly those feelings, those real experiences will fade in time. Though psychologically they can even block them out, but they will, and they should be told that they will have those experiences. I know this also from talking with several people who have gone through this. All right, now the religious aspect. I could right away pick on Catholicism because they're about the most famous right now, saying that no matter what, this is just absolutely wrong and you will be a sinner and you will be condemned to hell for ever having done such a thing. Well, philosophically regarding that, I've already criticized aspects of the Catholic Church, which, by the way, I still attend and still enjoy. There's got to be a realization, or there is a massive realization by almost everybody. And then to overcome a cultural conditioning is very difficult for people. But when it comes to the point where the Pope says you have to do it, or the Pope says you don't have to do it, well, that's not just the Pope. That's a hierarchy of a business, the business of the Catholic Church. I'm picking on them. That was the business of a particular religion. And that is men and women, mostly men, who are deciding this through various rationales, spiritual realizations, and mostly, I'm sorry to say, business propositions. In other words, how do we control the masses? Do we give this kind of power to our followers, to our parishioners? Do we count on their emotions and their compassion for life, that they will realize such situations as, no, I will have to interrupt my career or my schooling or my selfishness, and I'm not being judgmental when I say that, I'm using dictionary definitions, part of my life right now because of the circumstances that has either, and be careful how I say this, happened to me or that I have created in my life. In other words, was it a rape situation in a pregnancy from that? That has a tendency to give different circumstances than, no, I was only lustful and I didn't allow myself the time or the intelligence, if you will, to protect myself with means of contraception. And that's a whole nother subject too, but fits into the abortion issue. Because very bluntly, a vast majority of abortions are for fertility control. And for somebody to just say, I don't want to address fertility at all, I'm only telling you that abortion is killing a child to be or a human being to be, that's rather shallow-minded because they're only pointing the finger and they're name-calling, and they're not solving a very real problem. Abortions are forced on young children. By children, I'm talking about 12 and 15-year-olds, where, well, not to worry, we'll give this child an abortion and we'll do what we can to make her comfortable with the rest of her life. That may be advantageous. It may be successful to whatever your measurements are or whatever my measurements are regarding that child's expected life, meaning the young child who got pregnant. And of course, the issue of that we have potential. Well, I really would like to have some of the people who argue pro and con and are only steadfast in their position to start addressing potential. I mean potential, human potential. And I'm not just saying human potential that a zygote or a fetus will potentially become a viable, self-sustained human being. Yes, we all know that. Most of us are familiar with that. And there is potential there. But the potential of the individual, the pregnant mother, right? And what is the potential as a mother to be? What is the potential of, after having had an abortion, for that mother to be ever be a mother again? Or, again, potential. I don't want to give any titles to what my expectancy of any given individual is. I'm actually talking round and round circles. I'm just bringing up additional subject matters that have to be addressed to address the general issue of abortion, the abortion issue itself. My opinion is that such a thing should be dealt with as detailed as possible. I think that any individual who is considering an abortion as an option at all, I mean, even considering it, even thinking about it. Now, there's not desiring abortion, but having become pregnant are being frustrated by seeing in the newspaper the word abortion and are totally disgusted by that. I think that it's the responsibility of each individual to not be narrow-minded and say, well, I've heard of abortion, but my church says I shouldn't do it, so I don't want to hear any more about it. That's being very narrow-minded, and that's cheating yourself. That's cheating yourself of understanding the situations of people, and even gaining compassion for people who unfortunately make mistakes. And again, I'm not just saying that anybody who has an abortion has made a mistake. Not claiming that, because I won't speak for every individual. I know of many circumstances where there have been mistakes made, and the person has had an abortion and is sorry for that. Do they die a month later? No, they live on, and their potential is often enhanced culturally, enhanced spiritually, enhanced religiously, having gone through this quote-unquote mistake. Right? And for them, it was a mistake. It's something that now in their human condition that they are working out. And I'm not giving them an excuse for what they have accomplished in their life. I'm just saying that this is a real situation, and there are not one or two, there are millions and millions. I do think that it should be considered as an absolute last resort for anything. I think it should be considered as an absolute last resort for fertility control. I mean, I don't like the idea. In other words, intuitively, inherently, it's not correct. I don't like the idea. As far as an option for an incestual pregnancy or as a result of a rape, it should not be totally ignored. What are the options? What are the potentials? And again, I'm going strictly against the philosophy and so on of, again, mostly Catholicism and religious fervor that potential for life is there for life. Also, you have to realize that you and I are not the society. We're an integral part of it. And if you are feeling democratic at all and you say the majority rules, you can understand that philosophically. And the sign of the times is that unfortunate decisions are made that may very well be popular at the moment, but in 100 years from now will become to be realized as a horrendous mistake. Did the Roman Empire become extremely lustful generally? Was it popular and okay culturally speaking, and therefore by demand religiously speaking, by pressures and so on, that sexual orgies and lustful situations, because again we're dealing with abortion and sex therefore, and did it become the norm? Did it become acceptable to lose your virginity to a stranger, to all of these various issues that are intertwined and then ending up at the general subject matter of a conceivable abortion? And the fact is that yes, they did that. Yes, they allowed themselves over 100 years in time or more to culturally condition themselves to say, well, this is okay, this is okay. Well, this is an answer to this. This is a quick fix, a quick answer to this situation. And to also allow their emotions, in this case, a lustful emotion, or the things that rule their lives, become overwhelming in their lives, and therefore have their society become overly anything. There's a great danger in that. And of course, the Roman Empire was defeated from within. And did they honestly allow themselves to maintain their minimum spiritual awareness? No, they didn't. They justifiably, step by step, and of course we can be judgmental and say it got worse and worse and worse, but at any given time in that society, they said, we're getting better and better and better. We're enjoying more of life. We're having more states of ecstasy. When states of ecstasy are a benefit and joyful and all that, but a continuous state of ecstasy can only be experienced after this human condition, not during. Wow.
Okay. We've heard a lot about the energy influxes into the planet and the changes of the ozone layer and radiation and mutation. How do you see life being affected by it?
Yeah, certainly is being affected. In the last 10 years, I shouldn't brag because I shouldn't lay claim to a realization, but I've seen several changes, and I can be proud and brag and say that those changes have not been as bad as the scenario was shown to me, not only as part of, bear with me if I say this phrase, but a flash forward of my life review.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's almost a contradiction of terms, but as part of my life review, there was possibilities and probabilities of future scenarios. Some people might not understand that, but bear with me. As part of that, there were future scenarios and even bits and pieces of knowledge of future events. In other words, precognitive, absolute future events that were extremely negative by my standards. In other words, extremely detrimental to the environment, detrimental to we people. In fact, as we approach the turn of the century, in a time frame ranging from the last 10 or 11 years and extended through the turn of the century and even beyond. Hypothetically, let's limit it to, say, the year 2150. And in that time frame, there's been many changes. One of the delightful things that I want to share with you is that regarding the atmospheric pollution, the chemical pollutions, even the cultural conditionings, forms, if you want to consider that, forms of pollution. Are we allowing ourselves to become more lustful? Are we allowing ourselves to become greedy? Are we allowing ourselves to be and enjoy being a materialistic? Is this really the me generation? Give me more. And if I have more than you, does that make me better than you? All that's pollution. It's forms of pollution. Yeah, we've done a pretty good job in the last 10 years. I have played a part, a hands-on part of chemical pollutions. I've documented places and situations in the Niagara frontier, on the Niagara River, in the Rochester area, places in Italy that I've never been to before, various things that I have actually facilitated. In other words, a momentary event, a singular thing, a bunch of 55-gallon drums that I became aware of in one way or another. Chemical pollution of the human condition in Italy that I became aware of. What did I do about it? I did something about it. Did I right away call Greenpeace and take up a club and go and smash the chemical plant that was doing it? No, there's various other ways. Would that have changed the society? It would have made a news article for that day. But would it have changed the attitudes that create the situation of, well, let's get rid of this anywhere. It doesn't matter as long as we make a profit. The probability is that would not have changed that. So in an ongoing basis, in a flowing way, there is a time when you have to take up the garden hose and water this down and be careful how you do it. There's a time when you say, no, I really don't mind driving my car less if it's going to enhance the atmosphere. And that if my car pollutes this much, let me make a loving gesture and walk 10% of that distance until the car manufacturers, can come up with electric cars and so on. And there's all that sort of stuff. All that's been going on, and I'm glad to say that it's been going on at an accelerated rate. There have been a couple of major events that have come to pass that the event itself, precognitive in its origin, as I experienced, did not come to pass. Now, is that a contradiction of terms? In a way it is, but through acts of free will and the free will of mankind, something that is historically precognitive. In other words, it will happen on this day at this time, and it will take place like this. Well, through free will and enhancements and so on, as paradoxical as that sounds, or as contradictory as it sounds, the event in fact did not take place. I'm thinking of one particular event right now, but there have been several. So all that is upbeat. And I say thank you for everybody who's participated, and thank you for listening right now and coming to this realization that any one of us can make a difference, and collectively we have to make a difference. The negative side